Thank you, excuse me, thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic is today is capital punishment in Tennessee after the conviction. And we're fortunate to have with us this morning to talk about capital punishment and the period immediately after the conviction, Dr. ACharvet. Dr. ACharvet is a sociologist as well as a death penalty advocate, as well as the person who is concerned with pardons in the state of Tennessee. And of course, Dr. ACharvet, let me not only welcome you, but also to have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and in the meantime, you might be able to sort of straighten up some of the information that we gave in reference to your official kind of situation, how you see yourself in terms of dealing with capital punishment in Tennessee. That should be a part of your background kind of statement, and then we'll start talking about capital punishment after the conviction.
I first began working on death penalty cases about a week after I graduated with my doctorate, and I was asked by a defense attorney if I could interview some family members in Kentucky. And that was the first case I worked on, and for many, many years was described and defined as a mitigation specialist. Had never heard of that prior to becoming one. But our statute, and the statute of most death penalty, in most death penalty states, identifies that if you are seeking a death penalty, the jury should be entitled to weigh the mitigating factors against the aggravating factors. So the state would present the aggravating factors and the defense attorneys present the mitigating factors. And so early on, I had completed my degree about a week prior to starting this work. And I had studied family violence within the context of prevention and deterrence. And so equipped with a lot of information, and I think early on we thought that mitigation probably had to do primarily with family violence. And then later, as I explored mitigation on many, many cases, I came to understand that it's not simply family violence, it's community violence, it's violence in neighborhoods, in schools, in employment, on out to cultural issues of violence against people that seem to contribute to mitigation factors that statutorily are supposed to inform sentencing.
In other words, anything that that individual, any impact that society or the family or the community or baseball or whatever might have had on that individual's crime, that would be a factor that could be used in terms of dealing with mitigation. Is that what we're saying?
Well, and should be, so that we could understand the crime within the context that it occurred. There was a lot of difficulty early on in the cases that I worked in with pretty much being able to translate between attorney and client, and more importantly, I think, between family members who were victims of crime that were not identified and not served.
And so this is a sort of a murky area that you are now still in the process of trying to work things out, so that you could be fair to both the victim as well as the person who committed the crime. Would that be a fair characterization?
Well, and where I have taken it over the course of nearly 20 years is trying to place all of this information within the framework of restoring justice, recognizing the defendants and the victims, and primarily the family members of both, and seeking to answer the question. The question that I keep asking is, can a debt to society be paid? So much of my early work was with capital cases and with murders, and the product of the inquiry that I would do tended to address the question between life in prison or a death sentence. And what I had hoped over the years is to try to develop the same kind of science to the question of life in prison versus a potential release.
And so there, instead of hoping to keep an individual incarcerated forever, that there might be a possibility, even in a death case, that that individual might be eventually released from incarceration. Is that what we're saying? And of course, we're nearing our first commercial break, Dr. Charvet, and after we come back, we'll give you an opportunity to continue and perhaps elaborate on some of the things that you're saying. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.